In a new move, just a few hours ago, President Bola Tinubu approved 3 new directives in the oil and gas sector. The presidency noted that Wednesday's directive is in keeping with his efforts to remove obstacles to investment in Nigeria, harness the nation's resources, and diversify the economy for the benefit of Nigerians. Now, let's note a few points from this executive order. There will be a fiscal incentive for non-associated gas, midstream, and deepwater developments that have been introduced. Primary legislation was amended to introduce fiscal incentives for oil and gas projects. This will reportedly help reduce contracting costs and timeliness and promote cost efficiency in local content requirements. Now, contracting process was streamlined to compress the contracting cycle to 6 months and the application of the local content requirements without hindering investments or the cost competitiveness when it comes to the issue of oil and gas. Most reports we gather on the field shows that cases of oil theft still abounds. About 4 years ago, the Nigerian Navy, that's the NNS Croft, intercepts a Ghana-owned motor tanker with about 2 million liters of stolen crude oil sailing from Nigerian waters heading towards Benin Republic. Also have been quite some cases of stolen crude oil being discovered and destroyed.
Now, let's go back to the Petroleum Industry Act, which was signed by former President Muhammadu Buhari in 2021.
That's the PIB Act.
Yes. Its main objective was purportedly to promote the exploration and exploitation of petroleum resources in Nigeria for the benefit of the Nigerian people and to promote sustainable development of the industry, ensure safe, efficient transportation and distribution infrastructure, and transparency and accountability in the administration. To the layman, these might be petroleum engineering jargons, but thankfully we have Mr. Nick Agule, and not just him, we have Dr. Ganiu Olushola in the building to help us, look into this. Now I will start with you, Dr. Ganiu Olushola. The president coming up again to drop 3, directive on how to harness the oil and gas industry to make sure that we have proficient and also benefits of the, this oil here in Nigeria for the Nigerian people. This is not the first time that the president of Nigeria is looking into the oil and gas sector. 2021, Buhari said his own when he was in power, and now 2020. This is 2024, and the president is coming up again with a new measure to harness the oil and gas sector in Nigeria. Now, what do you make of this? Do you think it's going to yield, better results, given the fact that previous administration actually have, done something or something like that before now?
Yeah, good question. Yes, it's going to yield better results. But my concern is that why an executive order in the oil and gas? Why not executive order in the agricultural sector? Right? Why not executive order in the manufacturing sector? Right? We are running the economy like a mono economy. I say without oil and gas, we are done and we are down. Right? The executive order is bringing 3 major things. It said you are giving fiscal incentives to related projects. Right? You are reducing contracting costs. Right, and also you are promoting cost efficiency. When we talk about fiscal incentives, what we are also introducing into that policy is that we are giving you a tax reduction, we are giving you subsidy, we are giving you more incentives to be able to drive that sector and promote and bring in people. And do not forget, most of these oil giants are leaving. Right? Yeah. Shell, who is one of the promoter of oil in Oloibiri then, as APAC download, and how they downsize over 5,000 staffs. And these are one of the major players in the industry, one of the highest payer in the industry where people work, and they pay taxes so huge to the government. Not only as personal income tax, they even pay more as corporate taxes. Now they introduce, from petroleum profit tax, they now introduce a lot to level of taxes for them to pay. hydrocarbon tax and company income tax. So the government is already losing in that palace, right? Then the question is that can we, even in the financial palace, that's what we call portfolio investment. You don't put all your egg in one basket, right? Like what we said, we have the agricultural sector. Why are they still using hoes and cutlass? Why can't we mechanize it? We have a lot of land space. If you are traveling on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, on Abuja Road, on Castina Road, going to Kaduna, you see a lot of land space wasting.
Okay.
Right? So how can we take advantage? In the economic space, we talk about competitive advantage. How can we take advantage of our natural resources, improve on it, and so that we increase our food export, right? It's not just focusing on one sector. One administration come, yeah, we appreciate the PIB. It has been long overdue, but now we are signing an executive order to actually make that space a more attractive space. And the third one is talking about making cost efficiency in the local context, right?
Yeah.
But the question is that the environment itself, right? That we're just going to be focusing and more before. US is one of the major patronizer of Nigeria in terms of our crude oil. They've already discovered their hole. They've called off our bluff, right? A lot of countries are coming up in that space. So why do we still need to focus so much? Why can't we divert and see how we can strengthen our economy? And we know that this is what so much is coming from the agricultural sector, so much coming from the manufacturing sector, and so much coming from the oil and gas sector. So it makes the country to be well-bred. And with this, we can also strengthen our level of exports.
All right. Now, I'm going to come to you, Mr. Nick, almost immediately. So the presidency have approved these directives, right, in the oil and gas sector. And it's also been highlighted, in our conversation just some few seconds ago. Now, how do you assess these directives in terms of their potential impact on the industry and the nation's economy? Let's also put it in that former President Olusegun Obasanjo a few days ago, some time back rather, had said that the Nigerian crude oil is being stolen 80%. There's also another quarters of the General Overseer of the Redeemed Christian Church of God also saying the same thing. Security votes and all of this for security reasons. Now, the most interesting part of this all is 90% of what we get, we've been told, is being used to service debt. What impact do you think this directive is going to have on the industry and the economy at large?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to commend President Tinubu. It's not only criticism that we give him. When he takes a good step, we commend him. So this executive order is a step in the right direction. We commend him for it. He's trying to do something. However, if he has our ears, or if we have his ears rather, or the ears of his advisors, there are a couple of things he needed to have done more in this executive order. The first thing is that it talks about introduction of fiscal incentives for non-associated gas for the benefit of our viewers, because I'm part of the oil and gas industry. I'm in a position to explain some of these technical terms. Gas is produced in two ways. When you produce crude oil, some gas comes with it of necessity. When you produce crude oil, what comes out of the well is crude oil, gas, and water, collectively called hydrocarbons. So that gas that comes with crude oil is called associated gas because it's associated with the crude oil that you just produced. But there are gas that are produced on their own through gas wells. So this one is that you set out not to produce crude oil and you got some gas with it. You set out to produce only gas. So you explore for gas, you find gas, you sink gas wells and produce only gas. That gas is called non-associated gas. It's not associated with crude oil. It's coming out on its own. Instead, is a little bit of crude oil that comes out with that gas. And that crude oil that comes with that gas is called condensate. That's what we call condensate. So non-associated gas is what the NLNG has been doing. They have been producing a lot of non-associated gas, or rather, operators. NLNG on its own doesn't even produce gas. Operators like the Shell and the Mobiles and all of that, they produce non-associated gas and they send it to NLNG, who compress it and put it in tankers and export it abroad. So President Tinubu, in trying to give a better deal to producers to go and do more non-associated gas, is good, because we have not even started to tap into our gas resources yet. Nigeria is actually blessed with more gas than crude oil. And nations like Qatar, where the president came from, and perhaps maybe his visit to Qatar is what spurred him to do this. Qatar have successfully used only gas to become a developed nation. Qatar, they become a developed nation. Unemployment rate in Qatar is 0.1%. It's not even up to 1%. You know, like I say, power supply 12,000 to less than 3 million people and all of that. So Qatar, because they have become a gas nation, they even exited OPEC and say, we are not really an oil producing country again, we are now a gas nation. And if this executive order will turn Nigeria into a gas nation, prosperity will begin to smile on us. Of course, the second thing that the president signed in this executive order is to streamline the contracting process. But here the president did not go far enough. Maybe for the benefit of our viewers, I will also explain another thing that happens in the oil industry. When the oil companies started coming to Nigeria, perhaps because of the risk that Nigeria portended, they didn't know whether there was oil here or not. And also the federal government didn't want to be left behind. They wanted to be part of the production process. The federal government entered into what you call joint ventures with oil companies. So if you see like the Chevron joint venture, the federal government has 60% of it, and Chevron Corporation US has 40%. What this means is that Chevron is the operator. So they are the ones that recruit the staff and they spend the money to look for the oil. When they find the oil, they share the oil 60% to the federal government and 40% to Chevron. The problem is that the same way you share the oil, so you share the budget for producing the oil. So if Chevron now makes a budget of $5 billion, the federal government of Nigeria is expected to fund that budget with $3 billion, which is 60%. And then Chevron Corporation US will fund the budget with $2 billion, which is 40%. Consistently over time, the federal government has been having challenges funding its own share of joint venture budget. And that has militated against the work of the joint ventures, and they have not been functioning in the way they should be functioning. So President Tinubu should have gone a step further by saying, look, I am going to do something totally about these joint ventures. Because I don't have money to fund them, they could have, the president can go for the option of incorporated joint venture. Now, an incorporated joint venture, which something like a company like the NLNG is, the federal government will no longer need to bring money. The joint venture becomes an incorporated body, so they can go and look for loans, they run the operations, and when money comes out, they share the money to the people who are. So the federal government will just sit down and receive money, you know. Or the federal government should consider selling its stake in the joint ventures outrightly. So that is where the President Tinubu did not go far enough.
Now,
then of course, local content.
Do you think selling its stake, just like you suggested, do you think selling its stake, just like you just suggested now, would aid the funding of producing this oil, just like you were rightly mentioning a few minutes ago?
Yeah, absolutely. It will aid the funding because, you see, the federal government does not have money. This is the government that is printing money to pay salaries. So if they sell the stakes, and I can assure you that there are Nigerians who have the capital to buy the stake. So I would say sell the stake to Nigerians, don't sell it to foreigners.
Wouldn't that be
so
another
like I
risk?
get the example of the
Wouldn't that be another risk on the part of the government if we should sell the stake and not having any power? Wouldn't that be a risk for the government to sell her stake?
No. So let us get two things clear here. The government taking a share in the joint ventures is government doing business. It's not about government powers. It's government doing business in partnership with international oil companies. The government powers are derived from the regulatory regime. So like we have the upstream, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. That is the powers of the government to regulate the oil industry. That powers will never be given away, even if government says it's take. The government will still be the regulator of the industry. The government will still control the industry. The government will still be in charge of the industry. Government will be awarding licenses, and government will be holding oil companies to account. That power will not be ceded, even if government sees away its stake in the joint ventures, which is a business.
Now, Mr. Dr. Ganiyu, we are not just having issues with the petroleum industry. We also look at the power sector, whereby they've been having so many issues that made the government to say we have to privatize this, the power sector now. Until today, the issue of this privatization has not really solved the problem of Nigeria having stable power supply. Now, coming back to the oil and gas or the petroleum industry now, if, for example, according to what Mr. Nick Agule was saying, government selling this, the stake that they have with the joint venture and all that, if they say, okay, we want to sell this stake and all that, do you think that will actually help us out to have, or lift us from where we are in this, the issue of oil and gas, giving us not what we anticipate or what we expect from the sector now?
Yeah. Government selling its stake might not be advisable for now, because even government stake itself, it pays its own portion with oil. Over time, government does not pay cash. It's just say, okay, out of the oil you are exploring, some percentage which should be part of my funding capacity in this year line, use it as an oil, use it as an offset for my own portion. Yes. So that is how they've been working around, or the government at any point in time has not been dropping cash for them, because they don't drop the money. And also, let me also quickly touch base with the PSCN. You see, we've been saying it over and over again. You see, when you put a round peg in a square hole, this is what we're going to see. This is not the first time government is privatizing. Just like I said, during the time before the telecommunications industry came on board, right? There's an industry that the government runs before, and it's not sufficient enough. And government, that's why pioneer industry came in and says that, once you come as a telecommunication, we give you a waiver for some number of years. You are not going to pay tax for you to be able to, in as much that as you are coming in, this product is for the development of the country and it's going to benefit the citizen. And we see technocrats, we see people that are into the business, they venture into it. And that is why we see that in Nigeria budget, in Nigeria revenue, one of the industries that give Nigeria more revenue are the telecommunication sectors. Because we have the people in those sectors, they are technocrats, they are people, they are not just businessmen. There are people that knows what the industry entails. But when you look at now, the Minister of Power came and said that, we are going to withdraw your license. These are just, I will call it propagandas, right? Because you can't withdraw their licenses. They paid for it, right? The question is now that they are even owing even they say that Abuja itself is owing them. They supply electricity and you are not paying us. So how do you want us to run? And the people also running the industry, they are not actually technocrats. They are there to make business, to make money. So they are your friends that you brought into power. And the only thing you can do is unbundle it. Maybe you say that even if you want to withdraw it and get the right technocrat, but you need to pay these people off. You get the right technocrat that have the country at heart, and they have something to do. If you ask to also do with PPP or public partnership, or you bring in an investors that have to do it and let them give us an history of how they're going to run it, and you say that this, you now discover that we have the capacity. Even in the north, we have both the hydro and we have the thermal. The north itself can survive. This is what brought about inverters. You see the battery with the panel. The panel, it's only the sun that the panel derive power from. So in the north, why are we allowing the heat to just waste like that? When you get to the north, you can almost feel so much heat. We can generate electricity through that way, right? And we have we said the Kaji Dam is down. We have a breakdown. Let us think outside the box and see how we can. And you are mentioning the earlier time of the CBN increasing the monetary rate.
Yeah.
It's not good for small, because Nigerians, we are the SMSE, they are only surviving through loans. And once you increase it, it will have an inimical effect on them. Is it that the downside? Because virtually they produce their light, they buy fuel or diesel for their generator, they power their own light themselves, and they loan money from the bank and pay double interest. So if the capacity is no longer there, look at now, over 700 and something manufacturing companies are closing down because there is no, and power is the life of business. Anywhere in the world where there is a power issue, there will be a business issue. So these are things that needs to be corrected for us to be able to have a good business environment.
Right. Thank you so very much, Mr. Ganyu. We want to say that most likely be your final thoughts on this conversation. But then maybe in one sentence or two, the executive order as signed into law by the president, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Particularly about the fact that, yes, it is incentives for the oil and gas sector to do better. Is there, in your words, any light at the end of the tunnel?
There will be light, because, it comes at a good time when the giants in the industry are leaving the country. This is a way to woo them back and say, oh, there are incentives for you. There are better deals on the table. And the ones that are local content, we can improve you more. It's the best thing to do at this time, to retain some people. Maybe you also have some here that some are about to leave, and say that let us restructure things and make the environment better for you. And not only that, not only signing the executive order, there must be a political will to be able to enforce it. There's one thing for you to sign something, the another thing for political will. And the third thing also, that one of the things that give them a level of reservation is the insecurity. You need to tighten this insecurity and ensure that the country is safe for them to do business.
All right, thank you so very much. Mr. Nick, let's come to you almost immediately. Your final thoughts on this conversation.
Okay, yeah, so before I make my final thoughts, there's something I will need to comment on, which my co-panelist said. So he talked about the fact that oil companies are allowed to keep part of the production, part of the crude oil produced as cost. And that is true, but it's a different arrangement. That is called a production sharing contract. It's not a joint venture. So if he says that he doesn't want government to do anything about the joint ventures, either by seeding it out or selling it out, how are we going to get over this perennial funding deficit on the side of government, not funding the joint ventures enough? Okay. So that's a big issue which has to be handled. And for me, look, we sold off the telecoms. We sold off the telecoms, and Nigeria is better for it. Why? Because the telecoms used to be a charge on Nigeria's budget. We were paying to NITEL as a budget item. That has been removed. Instead, the telecoms are now contributing one of the biggest sources of revenue to government coffers. So we removed a charge and increased the inflow. And look at the kind of jobs that telecoms are building. Look at their contribution to our GDP and all that. So this is the kind of thing that happens if you allow the private sector to take over business and run it, because government is not a good businessman. All right. My final thoughts here will be that President Tinubu needs to do a lot more. There are a lot of low-hanging fruits, like we discussed about agriculture, we discussed about power supply, we discussed about the refineries. talk about the steel plants. You know, all those things are there for him to pick. And look,
Okay.
he can do better if he creates the enabling environment and woos in the private sector to come. But you see, private sector is not going to come regardless of his foreign trips. If we continue to hear about insecurity, kidnappings, and all of those kind of things in the country.
Okay.
So he should probably just sit back and get Nigeria to start working, and then the private sector will come in and help him in all of these areas. I think for me, those will be my concluding thoughts.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Nick Abule, chartered accountant, oil and gas expert, and of course, a public affairs analyst who have been doing so much justice to our topic this morning. And of course, also to our in-house guest, Dr. Gani Olushola, FCTI Managing Partner, KJB Professional Services. Thank you so very much, gentlemen, for being here. All right, that's about it on the discussion segment of VOP this morning. We will be going straight, almost immediately, to the business segments just about in a few seconds. Stay with us.
Where your morning starts